Thank you so much for joining us, and welcome to Joy in Our Town. My name is Calvary Kirshenman, and with us today we have Dr. Matt Frahm. He's with Max Health Chiropractic, and our topic for today is Foundations for Health. Thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Frahm.
Thanks for having me on the show. This is great.
Absolutely. Now, you are a chiropractor.
Yes, ma'am.
Tell me a little bit about that and how you became a chiropractor.
My story and the reason I became a chiropractor is because of a motorcycle accident that had occurred to me, and trauma that occurred physically to my body was creating health concerns. And after jumping around through the medical hoops and getting prescription medications that were only managing the symptoms and weren't actually getting to the cause of the issue, my mom's friend suggested that we go and see her chiropractor. And because of that, I was able to get the results that I was looking for and get my health back, and then that inspired me to help others be able to achieve the same. And so I just saw this gap missing between traditional approaches and not getting to the cause necessarily and what people could experience in their life. And I just wanted to bridge that gap. And it wasn't my medical doctor, it wasn't the physical therapist, it wasn't any traditional healthcare professionals that recommended me to go to the chiropractor. It was my mom's friend. And so I thought that there was a need there to help get the message out into the community, and so that more people could experience the results that I did too. So that's kind of the motivation behind why I do what I do.
Wow, that's awesome. And have you seen a growing interest in chiropractic services?
Absolutely. I would say a strong surge, especially in the last decade. If I could use a cliche, people are sick and tired of being sick and tired. And unfortunately, we're seeing more and more of that. So not to get into too many doom and gloom statistics, but heart disease rates are soaring, cancer rates are soaring, and sadly, childhood diseases are soaring as well. Allergies, autism, ADHD, Asperger's, and that's just the A's, right? We go through the whole alphabet. There's a lot of unnecessary sickness and suffering in our community right now. And we're looking to try and make a positive difference and turn some of those numbers around.
Well, thank you for sharing those statistics with us, because we really do need a realistic view of what's going on in our community health-wise. Now, you share a lot of healthy living, overall healthy living tips in your practice. What are the 5 essential healthy living tips that you would have for anybody who wants to move forward with a healthier lifestyle?
Yeah, I think it's important for us to get to the cause, and that's what the 5 essentials are. We've essentially identified 5 key areas that will allow people to get to the root of their health concerns. And so rather than just treating the symptoms and covering things up with a prescription medication, to actually make the fundamental lifestyle changes. And if you understand the body's capacity to heal itself, then it makes our model makes a lot of sense. So the world's greatest doctor in the room at all times is the patient themselves. It's the power that God's already put inside of our bodies. Our body is equipped and capable of healing itself, and that to me is amazing, that God's already equipped that. And so all we need to do is focus on empowering that ability and just allowing God's already designed innate intelligence inside each and every one of us just do its role. And so the world's greatest doctor isn't even me, but I get to work with the world's greatest doctor every day, and that's the power that God's put inside each and every one of our bodies for it to heal and self-regulate. And our hearts are beating right now. We're having this conversation. We can understand each other. All of that's happening because of what God's already provided inside of us to do that. So those 5 key areas. Number 1, it starts with your mindset. Maximize mind is our first essential, and the reason why that's so important is because if you don't have the right approach, then you're probably not going to get the results that you're looking for. And so our goal is to help people change the way that they view and manage their health so that they can have successful outcomes. And so again, the first component of that is getting to the cause and understanding what the cause is. And the cause isn't a lack of painkillers, if you're in pain. The cause isn't a lack of seizure medications if you struggle with that. That's not the cause. Again, those are the Band-Aid approaches. You would never look at a check engine light in your car and say, hey, I'm just going to put a piece of tape over it and color it black so I can't see the light anymore, and actually think that that was fixing the underlying problem, right? You got to open the hood up. You got to have a mechanic maybe take a look and see what's causing that check engine light to come on. Deal with the cause, and then what happens to the light? The light goes away because we've actually fixed the underlying root. So essential number one is a maximized mind and understanding what the cause is and having the correct approach to address that cause. So then the rest of the essentials are what help us to address the underlying root cause. So essential number two is maximizing your nerve supply. That speaks directly to the power that God's put inside each and every one of us. In order for your body to heal, it has to do so through the nervous system, right? The brain is the master coordinator of all healing in the entire body. And that power from the brain, in order for our brain to connect with the body, it has to course through the spinal cord and then come off the spinal nerves. It goes to every organ, cell, and tissue in the entire body. So the reason we take a look at the structural frame of the human body is because that's designed to protect the nervous system. So if I'm walking around like this, what does that tell you about my human frame? Is it healthy or is it sick? It's unhealthy, right? And so unfortunately, because of an unhealthy structural frame, that creates interference in proper function of the nervous system. And so if I interfere with the nerve going to your heart, what happens to the heart every day that it's not fully connected to the brain? It's getting sicker. Well, when our hearts get too sick, then we'll start seeing symptoms of that. And then if we don't address those at the cause, the heart will continue to get sick, even though we may be covering up the symptoms and we may feel better on the medication. If the cause isn't identified, eventually the heart's going to give out, and we're going to see unnecessary suffering or disease or even heart failure as a result of that. Now, play that out in any organ, cell, or tissue in your entire body, because the nerves go to every one, and it may not necessarily be the nerve in this part of this. It could be a nerve lower, it could be a nerve higher that's causing the problem. So essential number two is maximizing the nerve supply, and the way that we do that is we look at the structure of the human frame to make sure that everything's lined up the way that it needs to be so that the nervous system remains free and clear of interference. And again, going back to essential number one, understanding that the body has the capacity to heal itself. So our goal is if we find misalignments in the structure of the spine, to adjust those misalignments, because that removes the interference. And once we remove the interference, what does that allow? Healing. And healing can be restored in the body. So essential number two, remove the interference, let the body heal itself. And it's really that powerful. Essential number three is maximizing nutrition. So I think we all know that our eating plays a direct role in how healthy the body's going to be overall. And you may be able to get away with unhealthy eating for a meal here or there, and that's not a big deal, but it's really about the lifestyle of how we eat overall. And that's what plays a major role in how disease processes will play out in our body over time. Because everything that we eat plays a fundamental role in the cell, in the health of the cell. And ultimately, if you have healthy cells, then you're going to have a healthy person. If you have sick cells, then eventually that will lead to sick organs, and that will lead to a sick body and a sick person. So it really is at the cellular level. So we look at nutrition not just based on taste or food taste, but we want to look on how it impacts the function of the cell. And so when you implement specific cellular nutrition, then you can really move the needle and get to the cause of disease processes and understand how to address those from a causative standpoint. Essential number four is maximizing lean muscle tissue and oxygen. That's your fitness essential. That's the one where you're exercising. You want to keep the body active, keep the joints mobile, and make sure that you're maintaining a healthy weight overall. That's extremely important in an overall healthcare plan as well. And then finally, minimizing toxicity. And toxins are numerous throughout our world. Unfortunately, those toxins do affect the cell. So it goes back to affecting the cell, and that can create sickness and disease as well. So that's our 5 essentials system, and the reason that we use that is because each one of those areas help us to get to the cause and allow the body, empower the body to heal itself once we remove that causative factor.
Wow, those are all so powerful. And definitely they're basic, but at the same time, they're so difficult for so many people to put into practice.
Absolutely.
So it can definitely seem overwhelming.
Sure.
Now, where is a good place to start?
Yeah, a good place to start is to start simply. It can be overwhelming, and the recommendations that we make are simple, but they're not always easy. And I like to differentiate that because it's simple for me to tell somebody to cut sugar out of their nutrition plan. Now, that in practice can be very difficult, right? As many people have experienced before. So we actually have meal plans and recipes and educational tools that will help people be able to implement, sugar-free meal plans. And, also remember one of the essentials is minimizing toxins. So we don't want to replace sugars with artificial synthetic sweeteners either. So that kind of cuts things out and can frustrate people. But again, we help walk them through that. So, a perfect example of that, and maybe that's a bigger one to tackle. I usually like to recommend horizontal shifts instead. So a simple version of that would be switching out unhealthy fats, so cooking fats or consumed fats in your nutrition plan, switching those out with healthy fats. So for example, trading out your vegetable oils for coconut oil, for example. And that's a great lateral shift because just instead of cooking with vegetable oils, you're cooking with coconut oil instead. But the health benefits and the way that those impact the cell are numerous, and it's a completely different ballgame, vegetable oils versus coconut oil. And that can be a simple lateral shift that people can implement that doesn't seem too overwhelming.
Now, one of the things that you also want to strive to do is encouraging people to live overall a healthy life, whether or not it has to do with chiropractic practices or not, but you just really seem to be an advocate for healthy living overall. And it does seem as though many people try. I mean, you see health magazines, and it is thrown at us all the time that we should be healthy, we should be more fit, we should be thinner, and those kinds of things. But does it have to be the case that it fits a certain kind of stereotype in order for you to be healthy?
No, not at all. It's not for lack of effort or lack of desire, right? And at the end of the day, it's not desire, it's not intention that will actually get results, it's action. And so I would say that the biggest focus that advice or encouragement that I could give people that are trying to get healthier in this upcoming year, or any period of their life for that matter, is to really sit down some dedicated time to planning out goals that are actionable and really taking the right amount of action, because you may not know everything about it. So let's take the gym, for example, right? You could study workout books and you can read about every exercise in the world, but if you don't ever actually show up to the gym and try and do it, you're not going to get great results. On the other hand, you could have a person that virtually knows nothing about working out, but if they show up to the gym and just try, just showing up every day, which person's going to get better results? The person that actually makes it to the gym and takes action, right? And so, my encouragement would be, even if you don't feel like you know everything, don't let that hold you back or limit you from taking action. And just to start implementing some steps to keep moving in the right direction. And I guarantee you, if you start showing up in the gym every day from that example, there's going to be somebody there that knows something about working out, and they're going to see that you're trying, and they're probably going to lend you a helping hand, and they're going to help mentor you through the process. And I think that's one of the best ways to accelerating success, is to have a good accountability or a mentoring partner, somebody that's been there, done that, and can walk you through the challenges and the struggles much more quickly, so you don't have to beat yourself up with them, right?
Well, Dr. Frahm, there are so many more questions that I wanted to ask you, but thank you so much for sharing what you did with us today.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Thanks for having me on the show.
Absolutely. And thank you for joining us today. Today we've had Dr. Matt Frahm from Max Health Chiropractic, and we were speaking about foundations for health. My name is Kelly Kirschman, and this has been Joy in Our Town. Thank you for joining us, and welcome to Joy in Our Town. My name is Kelly Kirschman, and with us today we have Dr. Matt Frahm of Max Health Chiropractic. And today we are talking about how to avoid New Year's resolution burnout. Dr. Frahm, thank you for joining us. And what a great topic. This is definitely one that I have struggled with myself.
Thanks for having me on the show.
Absolutely.
Yeah, great.
Now tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, I own 3 clinics here in the greater Milwaukee area, Brookfield, Hills Corners, and Waukesha. And, our heart really is just to help people achieve their health goals. And unfortunately, we see way too much sickness and suffering right now in our community, and we just want to be, providers that can close the gap on that and serving people. So I'm honored to be here on the show. My personal story and why I became a chiropractor, stemmed from tragedy that happened prior in my life, and it was a chiropractor that was able to help me overcome that, and so that inspired me to help do the same for others. So just honored to be here.
Now, I'm sure that recently you have had a big wave of people coming to you with New Year's resolutions and different goals that they want to take on this year. Now, sometimes their motivations are really, really true and they really, really want to stick to it this year. But a lot of times the motivation is we ate too much over the holidays, or last year I just didn't work out enough and I'd like to work out more this year. When those are the motivations, is that really setting somebody up to fail?
Not necessarily, but I will say this. Of course, it would be better to manage those holidays better. And just to speak into that for a second, if you think about the holidays, it's really only about 6 actual days during that season, right? Thanksgiving Day, Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, New Year's Day. We could throw maybe a couple other days in there, but people tend to make it that whole like 65-day period from Thanksgiving all the way till the Super Bowl, basically, you know, the first weekend in January or February. So the opportunity exists for us to manage that better. And so I would hope that that would be more of the underlying reason, is that, hey, we want to honor God with our bodies. Let's not overconsume or overdo it with foods or, you know, beverages or whatever else may be tempting during this season. And of course, this is the season where people get sicker. You know, we see a lot more sickness and illness, and even unfortunately depression during this holiday season because of the extra stresses that people are put under, not only emotionally with the families and circumstances and work deadlines, but also physically, because we're likely consuming more sugars. We're getting less sunshine, so not as much vitamin D production for our immune system to function correctly. So there's a lot of factors that play into this season. And so yeah, New Year's comes around and the New Year's resolutions come because we probably failed to properly manage what is called the holidays in the first place. So hopefully that'll help for next season, that we could set some goals now that will manage that time period better this next year around.
Yes, absolutely. Now, you mentioned something very important, and that was honoring God with our bodies. That should really always be our motivation with getting healthy and changing habits for ourselves for the better. How do you explain that to somebody when they come to you and you're really looking at it from a stewardship standpoint? How do you really help somebody to understand that?
Yeah, I think it's important for us to understand the underlying motivation and the cause. And in our offices, we call this your big why. You know, what is your reason behind making these changes? Because let's recognize that change is difficult in any area of life, and almost, certainly I would consider even health changes to be some of the most difficult changes that we make in life, because they involve daily choices every single day. So, to answer your question, I would say, let's make sure that the motivation and the intent behind it is pure. And if you really are seeking to honor God with your body, and that's part of your big why, which it should be, God primarily, because he's given us our body, and so we should be using that to reach our full potential, to glorifying his name. And that's ultimately the most important way that we can serve. If we have our health and we have our full physical capacity of our body, that gives us the opportunity to serve at a higher level than if we were sick or if we were ill. And then the second I would say is that it needs to be something greater than yourself. Maybe it's for your family, maybe it's community outreach, but that would be the second layer to your big why. God first, community second, and then finally for yourself, because you just want to become a better version. I always talk about, being future Dr. Matt. And you're going to love future Dr. Matt. He's great. He's the perfect husband, and he's a great father, and, he works out every day, and he does everything right. And I think we're just always striving to try and be that better version of ourselves that we know that God's created us to be. Mm-hmm. But of course, there's the human nature of choices and just struggling through that and trying to become better. But I always believe that my future is greater than my past, and I just keep striving for that.
You speak a lot about just making sure that the intention is really pure and true and really wanting to honor God with our bodies. Now, a lot of us may have that intention, but we just may not have the motivation. Now, what are some daily things that you do to motivate yourself that you can tell other people to motivate them to really make this a lifestyle choice?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, ultimately the motivation has to come from the right place. You can't invest into others, or you can't accomplish, your highest capacity unless your cup's full. So you got to feed, feed yourself. And for me personally, that starts with the spiritual triathlon in the morning. And so what that looks like is, it's not physical running, biking, or swimming, but it's the trio of, prayer and meditation, reading some of the scripture, reading some of God's word, and then really focusing on the application for that day and how I can apply it for that specific day. And that's the spiritual triathlon. It doesn't have to be like hours upon hours. Usually takes about 15 to 20 minutes a day. So I do 5 to 10 minutes in each segment of that spiritual triathlon. And then that helps to make sure that I'm focused on, you know, what God's designed and intended for me and fulfilling the highest purpose and calling in my life. So if I'm feeding my soul and I make sure that I'm connected with the ultimate source of inspiration, that being our God, right? Then I know He's always going to give me the energy that I need and the resources that I need to pour into other people so that we can help them reach their fullest as well.
Now, there is not a very healthy perspective on health in our society, which is an interesting thing to say. But can you talk a little bit about what the current mindset is in society about health? And on the reverse side then, what is the true mindset we should have towards our health?
Yeah, well, I think unfortunately, traditional healthcare models have been primarily symptom-based. And it's really more of a Band-Aid approach. And unfortunately, that cultivates and creates a culture of sickness and disease. Because if you're not getting to the cause, so to answer the second half of your question, what's the true health? True health is getting to the cause. We know that God's created the most amazing healing capacity within each and every single one of our bodies. And if we do things that empower and enable that body to function and heal the way that God's created it to, we don't see the levels of sickness and disease that are currently running rampant in our society. So focus less on the symptom and focus on creating health inside of your life through the way you're living, through the lifestyle changes. And you know, I've been fortunate enough to be on segments before, and we've talked about ways to do that. And it's through our 5 essentials. We've identified